All right. So it says name 4 sites of food storage in plants. So we think about food storage after the plants produce their food. What process? No, what's the process that plants make their food? Photosynthesis. All right. Now, when that food is made, one of the things that the plant want to do is to ensure that it is available when it is needed. But the thing is, if it stays within the leaf, it will create some problem for the plant. It is going to be used up faster than how it should be. And so the plant will basically store it in another location. Sometimes it is stored in the leaf, but normally it is like the last resort. So anybody knows of any other location that the plant would store the food? Let me give you a hint. Carrot. So carrot, when we eat carrot, what part of the so the roots, yeah? And these are things that we know, but we probably a little bit, I don't know if we're not shy, but I want to have a open discussion. I want persons to be talking, I want to be hearing, especially like when I'm not seeing the faces, I can't see the expression. So just work. So the carrot. And definitely, I always tell students the carrot or these plants or these animals, when they do things, they're not doing it for us. So the carrot is not for you to go and cut up and blend up your juice and make a nice drink on a Sunday. The plant is actually storing the food in case, one second, in case it needs it at a later date. So the root is one aspect or area. Which other part of the plant? The stem. And we know sometimes we stop near the jelly man there on the roadside, and not only jelly is selling, he's also selling some sugar cane. So sugar cane is a prime example. Yeah, sugar cane. Yes, we consume it, we get sugar from it, but that's not the purpose. Not true. It's really for the plant for storage when in need. Where else? So the seeds, definitely. Example, corn. We have others, we have bean, we have other oils that we even plants that we use it for like castor oil and all of those. The food is stored within the seed. Yeah. So anywhere else? We consume it to man. The leaves. We said that the leaves, right? And I said before we need to remember we want to put a little asterisk beside it because again we don't really want to store the plant, don't really want to store it in the leaf because of it's going to be used up very fast, and that is not very good for the plant. So it stores it in other locations. So we are if it the name 4 sites, no, you don't have to give examples. The question didn't ask for examples, you just ask for the sites. But I just giving the examples so persons can relate to it. So when persons say root, people will more appreciate if Mr. Carrot, not true. Stem, sugarcane, seed, corn, and we have different types of seed, red peas, those are the seeds. Yeah. And most of the time, if you want to think about the storage organ, you can think about the part that you will actually consume because we know that the food is stored there, so that is the part that we normally, feed on. So lastly, all the fruits, and we have several. Let's start with what's the favorite fruit? Mango. Yeah, man. So mango is one of the top fruits for me, and jackfruit. But the plant stores the food there in those areas, and again, it is done in such a way that once there is a need for it, it can access it later. Cool. So any one of those four, I would advise in terms of the leaves, as I said, rarely, but it's normally temporarily as well. Is that a hand? No. A biology student claims that animals and plants store carbohydrates in the same way because both need energy to survive. Use your knowledge of carbohydrate storage and energy use to explain why this claim is incorrect. So they're basically telling you that what they're saying is not true. So they don't store the carbohydrates in the same way. So you're going to have to use your knowledge to explain why. So in your answer though, and they're asking for certain things specifically. So one, you need to refer to the form and location of carbohydrate storage in both types of organism. So what is the form that the carbohydrate is stored in plants versus what is the form that it is stored in animals? How energy is obtained from these stores and why there is a difference in the storage methods for plants and animals. So for one, the form. A plant stores the carbohydrate in a insoluble form. Anybody knows? Anybody knows the form? And we normally test for it using iodine. So starch. While animals store their carbohydrates in the form, anybody knows? Begins with a G. No. So glycogen. So one of the difference you're supposed to be coming out and saying is that the form. So the form here, we get in the one mark there to speak about the form. So the form that plants store it is starch, while animals store it in the form of glycogen. Yeah? Yeah, man. So the carbohydrates are located in plants where? Where would we store? And a matter of fact, we basically would have answered that part based on the question above. So where would it store in the plant? Where did we say? So via the leaf. And we want to, as I said, I don't want leaf to be a first answer, So rarely the plant really stores it there. So the root, where else? We just spoke about them. So the seed, stem, and fruits. So that would have been you telling for the plants, and carbohydrates are stored in animals. Anybody knows where? Where's the glycogen stored? Granules, yes. But where are these located? Yeah, of the cell. So that is at a cellular level. But where? Not in the blood. So it is stored in the liver and your muscles. Yeah. So we capture in what form it is stored. We capture where it is stored. And they said how energy is obtained from these stores. So how does the plant get it from the starch? Yeah? How is it obtained from the starch? So it is stored as energy, but where and how is it obtained by the plant? Or what is it used for? So it is used for what? Mm, So growth and reproduction, yeah. While in animals, we necessarily need the stored food so that we can get energy faster. So unlike a plant, one of the things that plants don't do, they don't um, carry out locomotion. So a plant don't get up and walk or somewhere. So while the plant requires energy, it doesn't need it same time. And that's why it can store it way down in the root, and then over time it can, get access to it. But for us, we know that when we need the energy, the cells in our muscle, they are going to be respiring. So they need that energy. And so while the while the energy from the food stored in plants is released slowly, in animals, the energy is actually released much quicker. Cool? So the glycogen is for quick release of energy. And we said that that is very important because you may need to get up right now. You're using a computer, you're writing. You need the energy right away. And so if it's not stored in somewhere where you can get quick access, you're going to run into problems as a animal who is mobile, who does locomotion. So while this energy or the food that is stored rather in the plant, it takes a time. So the energy, the stored food in plants takes time for it to be released, right? We said that for animals, that release of the food happens much faster, right? So glycogen breaks down faster, starch takes it own little time for breakdown, again because plants don't really require that immediate use of the food for energy. So over time that is good because plants they're not doing that physical movement like animals. Cool? So when we speak about the plant, how the plant stores it as starch. It is insoluble, and that helps with it not being utilized because it will affect how the plant absorb water and even the cells in terms of osmosis. And you don't want to have that imbalance, even within the animal cells as well. So they are stored in a form that is insoluble. So glycogen is insoluble, starch is insoluble. And the purpose of that is to ensure that it doesn't hamper with the concentration of the cell due to osmosis. Because you know that where you have a high concentration, you're going to have the water molecule going into those areas. So it is insoluble, meaning it won't dissolve in the water, so it won't affect it as much. Carbohydrates stored in the plants via the root, the seed, the stem, and the fruits, while the carbohydrates in animal is stored via the liver and the muscle. And these, especially the muscle, it is in a location where the animals can retrieve it much faster. So we said the stored energy in plants is used for reproduction, and the energy in animals yes, it is the energy overall is going to help with the metabolic processes in the organism. But when you want that quick release of energy, if you're supposed to jump up right now and run go around at the front of the yard, or run go take up some clothes, or run go turn off a stove, or run go do something, you wouldn't want to know that you can access energy to do that task. So we're different from a plant. So the glycogen can be quickly converted to glucose. So bear in mind, both of them, even in the plant, it is transported as glucose. So when we are digest, when we eat, we basically have absorption of glucose in the small intestine. But when it is time for it to be stored, it stores as glycogen. As soon as we need it, it can be converted back to glucose. Yeah? Good? Them not answer me. We're annotating. So we're looking at the lumen. We're seeing the lumen. What you notice about the lumen in the artery versus the vein? All right. Now, why is that the case? All right. So remember the thing about the artery is that they have valves. Yeah. So the vein, they have valves, and they have valves to prevent the backflow of the blood. So because of the lumen, if you notice the size of it, it also requires the vein to have this thick wall. Yeah? So when we're doing our annotation, the area, so the lumen would be large, right, for the vein, and it would have been, typically smaller compared to that in the artery. Yeah? In terms of the wall, and we can talk about these smooth elastic fibers. Block out the word artery and vein. So what are the role of the elastic fibers? Anybody know? The elastic fibers. It responds during? Okay. All right. So when you would compare them, when you look at both, what would you, in terms of the artery, how are these elastic fibers? How are they represented? Compare them. So is this orange area right here? So note this orange area right here. So what would you say about the elastic fibers in the artery versus that in the vein? No man, we're talking about how they look. So how they look? It no look thicker. Look at the width of it versus the width of it when it is in the vein. Yeah? So in the artery, definitely the elastic fibers, they are thick. And one of the things we want to remember is that blood is pumped through your artery at high pressure, and thus it needs to be thick to be able to withstand that pressure, right? While in the vein, it's at a lower pressure. So again, the elastic fibers, they don't have to be that thick within the vein. Yeah? And now talk to me. So even the walls of the vein, the walls of the vein, they're not thick. And again, speaking to the concept about whether you have the blood being pumped at high pressure or not. I was looking for another diagram to put here so that we can have maybe two. But remember, this is something that you would have drawn in this space, provided. Usually for the exam, this is a more of a hybrid paper, so it's not going to be this complicated as how they were asked. Yeah. Most and some cases you'll be given the drawing and maybe to label and to identify the different parts. Yeah. So valves are present within the vein. We don't have any valves in our artery. And again, that is linked to the fact that the artery pumps the blood at high pressure. In terms of the wall, we said that the artery has thick wall. So the veins, they basically have a thin wall. And again, it is linked to the pressure at which blood is pumped through both. So running through the elastic fibers, the lumen, the thick walls, and the valves. Those are four things you can focus on. And of course, they mention about the annotation. So even the valves, you'd have mentioned that they prevent the backflow of blood. We speak about the lumen, which is small in artery it is small, and in vein it is large, and that is due to the fact that the blood is being pumped at high pressure. The elastic fibers, you want to be able to, when it is smooth, that's one thing we never mention right here about the artery, it is also smooth. So it is smooth and it is thick, and so when the blood passes through, it is more elastic, so that when the pressure hits it, it will basically go back to its original size. So those are the four areas or the four parts that you want to distinguish and speak to in terms of their function as it relates to the artery and the vein. Wonderful. The process by which plants lose water through their leaves is transpiration. So just to clarify, it says explain the biological significance of each of the following commonly made statements. A complete explanation must have two clear points. All right. So transpiration is a necessary evil since the plant loses water continuously via this process. What do we mean by that? The 2 points we want to talk about. So what is the good about transpiration? What's the benefit of the plant losing water? Anybody knows? So what it does, it helps to cool down the plant. So transpiration, the movement of water, water have a high heat heat capacity, and so it helps. Just like how when in animals like humans and we sweat, it gets rid of the heat. So as the water is traveling up the plant, it basically allows for the plant to cool down. Not only that, this pull of the water, it is what allows for the plant leaves to get water, which is necessary for photosynthesis. Not true? True? Yeah. So that's why they said that's why they're talking about the fact that it's evil. So the negative part about it. So those are the positive part, because at the end of the day, if it wasn't for transpiration, and we know about transpiration, pull, adhesion and cohesion, if those weren't happening, water would not get to the leaf. And as I said just now, right there in the chloroplast, up into the leaf, where you have the chlorophyll, trapping that sunlight, that is what splits the water molecule, giving you off oxygen and also the hydrogen ions that is needed to, you know, carry out the process of converting the carbon dioxide into glucose. So that continuous flow is very important, because that's how water gets to the leaf. That's how the plant also helps to cool down itself. But a continuous flow is also bad for the plant. So what's the evil part of it? It can cause the plant to start to wilt. Yeah? So it's especially if there is low water within the soil. So there's going to be a problem for the plant, because the water would be leaving because it's going to be, transpiration is continuous. So no matter what is happening, you have ways that the plants try to conserve by closing the stomata, to the guard cells help to, monitor the stomata so that it reduces transpiration. But at the end of the day, even by doing that, if you have transpiration not happening in that sense, the plant is going to wilt and it's going to die, because even through the same pores that the water vapor is leaving, that is the same pore that carbon dioxide is entering. So on a given situation, while you have transpiration, which is something good, if there is not a access of water within the soil, that water leaving is going to cause the plant to wilt, because the plant is going to try and conserve. By doing so, it prevents the carbon dioxide from entering. So a continuous lack of water, a plant will eventually die. And we know persons who are growing plants, especially farmers, they would have, when drought come around and talk about drought. So if you don't have the water, you're not gonna get the scallion and those things from your bread basket or your Jamaica down in St. Elizabeth. So it is very important to get water to the leaves, but it's also detrimental to the plant if it is continuous and the water is not being replenished within the soil. Cool? Yeah? Ready again. It says phloem cells have very few organelles, yet they are able to transport organic food to all other parts of the plant. How are they able to do that? Anybody knows? What does the phloem transport? What does the phloem transport? I didn't hear it. All right. So, yeah, in the form, we call it sap. So the phloem is adapted to do this. Anybody knows what the phloem have? They have what? They have sieve tube. We know about the sieve tube. Now, the sieve tube elements, as it says, the phloem lacks certain organelles. And so the sieve tube elements, they have lost their nucleus. They don't have any ribosomes. They don't have any mitochondria. Most of the organelles are absent within the sieve tube. Why? Anybody knows? So when we look at the sieve tube, so the sieve tube, it wouldn't have any, and we have the other thing on the side, right? And so this is basically continuous. So what it does, it allows for the free movement of the cell sap, the free movement of the food. Yeah? It's something similar to what happens in your red blood cell. So your red blood cell lacks most of the nucleus and the other organelles that will take up the space. So its oxygen carrying capacity is much better. Something similar happens here. So because the sieve tube is basically empty, it can allow for the better flow of the cell sap, which is the sucrose, the glucose that is being transported to the different areas. Now, even though it doesn't have any of these, it still needs to be able to get instruction. And that's where this cell comes in. Anybody knows who supports it? We call that cell that supports the sieve tube. So the companion cell, yeah? So they are the ones that have the organelles. They are the ones that basically allow for the movement of the nutrients due to active transport. So it provides the support, the sieve tube element, since it has a nucleus which allows for active transport with the aid of ATP. So you have your companion cell that has a nucleus, and what it will do is to monitor in terms of the how we call it in technical parts of the plant, how it transports and how it carries out the metabolic activities. Remember, it doesn't have any nucleus, that is the sieve tube, and so in terms of instructions, it's going to be complicated. So that's why the sieve, the companion cell, is right next to the sieve tube. So it will give the instruction as to how to monitor the different concentration and the movement of the glucose in the form of sucrose in the as the process active transport, which would have required some energy. So even though it doesn't have any cell organelles, it still have that support, a companion cell, which does have those organelles that will carry out the respective function. The pulmonary artery and the hepatic artery are both arteries, but they function differently. When we talk about hepatic, what comes to mind? So which one is it? Which one is it? Which one is it? So pulmonary is which one? All right. Go again. So again, hepatic is which one? So the liver. The liver. Once we hear hepatic, it's the liver. Which one is for the kidney? Renal. All right. So renal for kidney, hepatic, liver, pulmonary, the lungs. So let's dive into it. One of the things that arteries do, with the exception of one that we're going to be looking at. So the hepatic artery carries oxygenated blood. The liver, right? So in remember it is located there, but the hepatic is directly taking the blood to the liver. Carries oxygenated blood. And this is done at high. It is done at it is done at where them there. So it's done at high pressure. Yeah man, we soon take the screenshot. It is carried at high. So pressure. Why is it carried at high pressure? Where where is this where is this blood leaving from? So it's coming all the way from the heart. I mean, the distance you might look at it as if, when you look at it compared to your body, it's further away. Yeah. So it carries that oxygenated blood right from your aorta straight to the liver. And this is used for metabolic activities. Yeah. But when we look at the pulmonary artery, what does it carry? Yes. So remember, I was hinting at it. It is the only artery that carries deoxygenated blood. And where is this deoxygenated blood heading? The lungs. Why is it heading to the lungs? Be oxygenated. Now, this is done at low pressure. And this helps to right there in your lung, right? If you remember those small sacs, capillaries of the alveoli. You don't want that blood to be coming at high pressure so that it will damage them. So unlike the hepatic artery that needs to send oxygenated blood at a greater distance, when you look at the pulmonary artery, it is leaving right there from your right side of your heart, yeah, heading to your lung. The distance is very short, and so you don't have to have the blood, being pumped at a high pressure. So low pressure, and of course, the difference is it has deoxygenated blood. Cool? We want to talk about our left ventricle versus the right ventricle. So what is the difference? What is the significance of them? The left and the right ventricle. And so let us, for those who might want to know which one you're talking about. No man, we're talking about the ventricle. Let me go back to the question so you can see it. So it says the left ventricle of the heart is much thicker. That's what we're talking about, the thickness, than the right ventricle. Yes, wonderful. So simply put, left ventricle thicker. This deals with systematic circulation. And then the right ventricle, thinner. We have pulmonary circulation. And as I said, once we hear that, we should be thinking about the lung. So you have less resistance getting the blood from the right ventricle to the lung, and so it needs less pressure, right? But to get the blood moving throughout the aorta all over the body, we need much more pressure, not true? True? Yeah. It just have less, remember, it goes to the concept of the muscles. The muscles, it needs more energy. So the thicker you are, it is due to the more muscles that you have. So you have more muscle, which means you need more, it is evident that you need more energy. So like somebody who is a bodybuilder, if you're getting up, lifting up all of these heavy You know what them call them? What them call them? Weights, dumbbell, and all of that. Eventually, your arm starts to get thicker because yeah, the arm I say, but in order for me manage all of them weight, me have to need more muscle. Not true. So your arms get thicker, your chest get, broader. So it's the same thing happening in the heart. If it is that the heart, the left side has to be pumping this blood all over your body, then it would be necessary for it to have more muscle to get more energy to do that pumping of the blood. While, I mean, the right side, it's only pumping the blood right there. It'll go right there. So I'm sure if you do that with two of your arms, your right arm and your left arm, you take up a dumbbell every day with your right arm, eventually your right arm is going to get more thicker. Not true? So it's really based on the task at hand. So it is influenced based on what they are required to carry out. So the blood is being pumped at low pressure, and God made it that way because if it were pumped at high pressure, it would have been damaging to when it reaches the lung right at that alveoli, your body would have had problems. So it is even beneficial that it's not being pumped at a high pressure. The capillaries them would have burst with the hard sort of pressure weight to come with. Yeah? But the left side can do that because by the time it reached down to the liver, yeah man, the pressure not so strong. But it would have needed to have that push from the left side throughout the aorta, moving to the different location where the oxygenated blood is needed. Yeah? So where you hit a specific part of the knee, the patella tendon, you tap it and your foot does kick out. Not like not like ding dong, Ding dong say kick out. Or who says that? But because of the hit on the patella, your foot is just when you go doctors, they test it, they do it. I've never gotten it tested. So maybe you can go to the doctor and ask them to do it. You have to hit the exact spot though. Anybody ever do it? Apart from Miss who say no. So when your patellar tendon is tapped, other aspect is the pupil reflex, right? So when your pupil constrict due to bright light, you know when time to wake up in the morning and somebody just come turn on the light in the room. Not true. I'm not, definitely, because you don't have to think about it. But remember, this monitors. Go again. Why you say that? And we want, well, you can think about it and do it, but you can put thought into it. The blinking, what we're really talking about, as Miss was saying about somebody flinging a pen. I don't know if at school or that, then they're not there at a school. Make sure, Right? So if something is coming towards you, you're walking and you know that sudden dust bowl just occurs. You know, if you think about your eyes just going to just react. Something will come fast, your eyes are going to be closing. Yeah, man. Sometimes we do it to like if you're another example to is like you're driving. I don't know if you ever like I go under something like a tree or so, but yeah, they are bending on your head when you really you not go there because you know anything with the vehicle go you know get damaged. But you're responding to that because you're really seeing it. The other popular one is the withdrawing of the hand. You went home unknowingly that the food just done cook and grab onto the cover of the pot and automatically you just drop it. Like in a second. You don't have to think about the pot is hot. As you touch it, me I talk about extremely hot. Me not talk, it's not so hot and you just hold it and know say if you unknowingly know that, the food was just prepared, but you're hungry and just want to go in at the pot. And you hold on to it, you're automatically just going to drop that cover in within seconds without thinking about it. Now, if you never really want the person who say you're going at the pot, you have got us. As much as if you are trying to tough it out, but it a go drop and make noise or it a go ruffle. Somebody a go hear it. So we have these in terms of the question. We should have stayed two examples. We got 4. So any one of those two in terms of the reflex action would have warrant the mark. The next part is this aspect. So it says complete the following diagram by outlining the reflex arc which occurs when a bright light is shone on a person's eye. I was gonna cut it down a little bit, kind of just narrate down to this. So we can just deal with this part of the oh, I was wondering what is happening. So because I move this, I'll bring down that. So after the bright light, what's going to happen in that box? Mm-hmm. Go ahead. No man. Wait. So what down here, so? So the photoreceptors in your retina. Yeah. Where is this? Not true. What do you mean? Well, we have 7 boxes and we're supposed to deal with the steps. Definitely you're going to have to speak about them in their separate part. They have different function. So you're going to have the sensory neuron, or we call it the afferent. Then we have would have the relay neuron. Yeah. So the relay neuron. Then we have our motor neuron. Then of course we have the effector, which is the circular muscle of the iris that's going to control. So that is the order in which we are going to respond. And then of course, this circular muscle rather would basically change the size of the pupil. Who is this person now? Pronounce her name of who? Suraj. Yeah. Nobody not pronounce the name for me. So he visited the doctor, and when the doctor tapped on his patellar tendon, there was no visible reaction. Suggests a biological reason why there was no jerking of his knee. All right. So we can look at the fact that, remember, there could be some form of damage as well to his reflex arc. Not true? Or we have a damage to the tendon or the knee joint. So one of those two, and you would have been given the mark. The other part of the question speaks to explain why a person blinks when something touches his or her eye. Why do we blink? All right, so you went ahead and explained how we carry out the reaction, but we want to know why that reaction is done. So, as you said, definitely protection. So blinking protects the eye from damage. Yeah, and the involuntary response. Why is it? So we're talking about what the blinking. Why is it that we need to blink? We are protecting our eye, so we blink because of that. But it's also happening because of an involuntary response, as we said. So it's a rapid response without the conscious thought. And again, it also reduces injury to the eye. Yeah? Specifically your cornea. Not true. Miss Jordan. Jordan. Both hemispheres of the brain work together for creativity, sorry, and artistic ability. Not true. Brain functions, they are not divided. Yeah? So the brain functions are not divided into the hemisphere. In fact, different parts of your hemisphere will help. Multiple parts will help in terms of the regions to allow that creativity. All right. So, I don't know what Joy friend. I want to think Joy for the drop that friend company there, right? Yeah, man. Intellectual thoughts, anything that deals with higher mental function, right? Logic, calculation, we need that. Now, Simone Biles is the most decorated gymnast in history with 11 Olympic medals and 30 World Championships medals. Name the main part of the brain that she is most dependent on to execute complicated routines on the balance beam. Mm, remember, the medulla oblongata deals with involuntary. Um, go again. Yeah. So the cerebellum this coordinates the muscle movements, and it also helps with balance, posture, and fine motor skills. So she's going to be using that part. The next scenario speaks to the Panama Canal has been described as one of the largest and most difficult engineering projects ever undertaken. Name the main part of the brain that played a key role in the planning and execution of this great engineering feat. And why is that the case? Definitely. So it deals with the complex decisions that are made. In the human body, the initial effects of cocaine, including dilated pupils, high blood pressure, and increased heart rate, name the main part of the brain that is immediately affected by cocaine. And why is that? Wonderful. So these are involuntary autonomic functions. Yeah. And so we use the medulla oblongata to deal with that. So once you know the different parts of the brain, you would have been able to maximize on those marks. A biologist made observation of wildlife and their feeding habits within a terrestrial ecosystem. Once it's terrestrial, what we're talking about? So land. Yeah. Listed below are the organisms observed, and in brackets are the organisms that they feed on. So we have the leaves, the fruits, and the seeds, while we have the caterpillar feeding on the leaves, the fruits, and the seeds. We have grasshoppers feeding on the leaves, the fruits, and the seeds. We have a hawk who is feeding on the squirrel and the iguana. We have the iguana who is feeding on the leaves, the fruits, and the seeds. The great crested flycatcher feeding on the grasshopper and the caterpillar, and the squirrel is feeding on the leaves, the fruits, and the seeds. Based on the list above, identify two primary consumers. So what are primary consumers? What are primary consumers? What are primary consumers? All right. Interesting. So who do they feed on? All right. It's just funny that you never said that they feed on the producers, and you said that, it is who the secondary consumers feed on. So that's definitely correct. So they're feeding on the producers, and the producers would have been the plants, not true? Primary consumers are also considered to be herbivores. So that's the next thing you need to you can look at as well. They are more than likely herbivores. And so they would be feeding on plant material. Yeah? So 2 examples. So caterpillar and of course the grasshopper. It can eat plant material. Seeds. You never you think if you leave rice and them someday the rat not gonna eat it? If you leave out corn seed or anything that is plant based, you think them are gonna leave it and just eat meat alone and cheese and those things? Yeah. So they you have bush rat too, you know. You have, they call them ratos. Um, you have different species of rats. So not all rats are like the same. You understand? Yeah, man, and all of them are living in a garbage bin. Some of them are on the outside, in the bush. But yeah, they consume plant material. Using the 7 organism observed, draw one food web. So food web. So we're basically dealing with who? For the food web, we're starting at the bottom. So we said the leaves. We have fruits. We have seeds, not true? The caterpillar. I remember who is doing the eating. The arrow is pointing to it. Yeah? Who else? Grasshopper. The grasshopper eat all 3 as well. We also have the squirrel. So he could have been one of the primary consumers that we listed. Yeah? We also have the iguana. So we have the great crested flycatcher. And they're eating the grasshopper, and they also eat the caterpillar. And we have the auk. and they eat the squirrel and the iguana. So based on the list of organisms provided and the food web drawn in A2, identify one carnivore. So who is a carnivore? What do carnivores do in terms of their feeding habit? All right, so they feed on other animals. So who is doing that? So we said the hawk can be one, and the great crested flycatcher. Got in reach home now. Oh. Go again? Doing what? Your whole the one role of the plant material. What's the role of the plant material? All right. And they really, one of the major things that they do is to bring energy into the food web. Yeah? So they're the only ones that convert, right? They convert the food, convert the sunlight, inorganic substances, along with the inorganic substances to organic substances. So if you want to say they're a source of food, as persons were saying, they're also, as I said, they provide energy and nutrients to the food web. All right. It says, based on the list given in A, draw one food chain consisting of 3 organisms. So we want a food chain consisting of 3 organisms. Where is this? So we can have leaves, fruits, seeds. You can use a grasshopper. And who was feeding on the grasshopper? The great crested fly catcher. Yeah. So that would have been one of the key things you need to remember, that the arrow points to the organism that is doing the feeding. Yeah. So this question says, name 2 abiotic factors other than soil moisture and carbon dioxide that impact living organisms. So pH, what else? Tem Temperature, that was already listed. Yeah, moisture was listed. You're just reading them back, but remember the question. So one of the popular mistakes that I see students doing is to giving back one of them that was listed in the question. So if we listed soil moisture and carbon dioxide. So you can give back those as your response. Well, altitude will come tying with temperature to some extent. Even wind speed and salinity. Yeah, man, nutrients. So those are some of the factors, and we say abiotic factors are non-living factors that impact on the living organisms. So abiotic factors play a critical role in the balance of an ecosystem. A biologist recorded the values from low to high for 2 abiotic factors: soil moisture content and carbon dioxide concentration. Now, present in a terrestrial ecosystem over a 1-year period. Yeah? So soil moisture content percentage by volume. We have low 1, normal 15, high 45. Carbon dioxide concentrations, parts per million, ppm, and we're seeing the values. All right? So it says, use the information in table 2 to explain what would be the result if soil moisture levels were consistently recorded at 62% by volume over a 3-week period. So what will happen? So remember, at 65, the water content per percentage by volume is high. At 45, we record 62% by volume over a 3-week period. What's going to happen? So that would mean that what's going to happen to the soil? So it'll become waterlogged, not true? Now, if you have a soil that is waterlogged, what it does is to remove the oxygen or remove the air. Now, if the air is removed, oxygen is removed. And if oxygen is removed, so plants living in that area, you're not going to have any form of root respiration is going to be affected. A lot of moisture also means a lot of fungal diseases or infection. Yeah? Nutrients can be washed out of the soil due to leaching as well. Now, because you have a reduction in oxygen, you're going to have an anaerobic bacteria, and they also like to convert the nitrates back into nitrogen gas. So that in itself is going to also lead to a depletion of the nutrients again. So all of this is going to be happening. Plants can also rot. And also they can end up dying. So again, it's really linking this to say that we have a waterlogged condition, and water and air occupies the same space within the soil. So once you have the water coming in, it's going to limit the amount of air that is available. A typical soil, the composition, air is 25%, water also 25%, and this is an average soil. We have our mineral matter, which is the silt, the sand and the clay. And this is 45. And then we have the humus, the organic matter. Now the thing is, water and air always add up to 50%. So if you add more water, so on a high, it's already high if it is 45. So imagine how it is if it is 62. This soil is going to now be waterlogged. So all of that air is going to be forced out of the soil. So less air within the soil or minimal air, and air contains a mixture of gases, and oxygen is one of those gases. So the roots of the plants that are there, other organisms that rely on oxygen to respire aerobically, they're going to die out because there's a lack of oxygen now in the soil. So we have the roots of the plants not being able to respire properly. So lack of respiration, lack of energy. The moisture is the perfect environment for fungal growth and infections. So you can have things like root rot due to the excessive presence of water. So you're not supposed to really overwater plants. The water will also be going down into the soil, and even with that, you may have water running on the soil, and so it will be taking away the nutrients. Yeah, in some extent you can even have soil erosion happening. So the nutrients is not there in the soil, so plants are going to die. Anaerobic respiration is going to now kick in. So these microorganisms, especially the bacteria that likes to reproduce in that sense, will now say, yes, we're happy. The plant's root can rot and the plants can eventually die as well. All right. So once we record 410 in terms of carbon dioxide for a consistent basis, remember carbon dioxide is a raw material for photosynthesis. So the plants are going to be saying, yes, we now have all the, well, we have one of the things that is needed for that process. So usually what will happen is you're going to have a peak in photosynthesis until something else becomes a limiting factor. So whether you're not getting enough water or light, but definitely carbon dioxide is going to be there. Yeah? So what is genetic engineering? Anybody? Yeah, definitely. So we manipulate and I'm just giving some points. So manipulation, and under this, technically what they will do is to either introduce or remove or even modify the genes to produce a desired trait. So a lot of genetic engineering happening, and I always use this as an example that, even like Rastafarians, want them say me I bash them, or even some persons will say that, we're not going to eat the chicken because they modify the chicken. But one of the things that they don't realize is that they're also modifying plants. So it's not limited to animals only. So genetic engineering is not something that is limited to just a chicken and a pig and a cow. We do it with corn. We do it with callaloo. We do it with sweet potato, sugarcane. Yeah. Again, they modify whatever gene that is responsible for the creation of the seed. So they're either going to remove it, modify it, and that will prevent the plant from producing these seeds. So you have a seedless grape, you have a certain type of oranges. Remember, originally banana and those crops, they don't look like that. We have modified them so that we can have our nice taste and preference. So again, persons will speak about the animals, but a lot of persons don't understand that even with plants, they were modified as well to get a certain size. Because again, that is a takeaway that is not suitable. Somebody consider it not as um, you know, sweet, or it's not as attractive with the seed. Who wants to feel this grape seeds in their mouth while they're eating? No, we don't want to feel that. So, hey, let's modify the grape so that when it produces the fruit, it lacks this seed. And again, all of this is done for taste and preference. Yeah. Now, mark you, again, in terms of manipulating, we do, and even questions further down speaks about what it is used for. Yeah. So it does have its benefit, because you have crops that would not have survived in a certain drought condition. You have crops that are more resistant to pests and diseases. You have animals that, tend to even grow faster. A prime example is the chicken. Chickens take 21 weeks to reach maturity. But if we are going to wait that long in terms of food security, we are going to run into problems. So they genetically modify. So these, what we call white fowl. In Jamaica, we say white fowl. They mature in 6 weeks. So by 6 weeks, you can kill one, and KFC and the other fast food place can get it so that you can get a chicken sandwich and your zinger, not true? But you do consume that chicken though, and that is the thing that I don't understand. Persons will say that, hey, we don't eat from KFC, but it doesn't matter which chicken you eat. That's all of them is coming from the same type of egg. And again, if you eat the tilapia or if you consume corn, these are also these are also modified. But yeah, so artificial selection, what is that? We as humans select for a particular trait. Yeah. So what we do is selective breeding. I have a friend who is a dog breeder, and one of the people go for the Shih Tzu, and she knows all the type of breeds of dogs out there and all of that people go for, the house dog versus one that is more, you know, like a guard dog. So at the end of the day, we do the breeding. If you know about, we had a Jamaican scientist, TP Lecky, Dr. TP Lecky, and he took, the white and black cow. Them call them Holstein from those areas that produces a lot of milk. But he recognized when he carried them here, they had problems surviving our temperature. Yeah. So he bred them with another animal from, Africa to get the Jamaica Hope. Yeah, man. So Jamaica Hope was created by our renowned scientist, Dr. T.P. Lecky Hall. He also did the Jamaica Black and Jamaica Red, that are meat breeds. So we're using the same concept. So as I said, it is important along that line, because those cattle, they're normally in an area where it is colder. So when they come to the tropical area, they did not produce as enough milk as they would because of the climate conditions. So, genetic engineering allowed, sorry, not genetic engineering, but artificial selection in terms of him breeding for a specific. So he wanted the trait of the high milk, but he wanted a cattle that can, withstand the conditions here in Jamaica. Mitosis, of course, that is a cell division. And what you want to bring about, or what you want to speak about, is that you get identical daughter cells. And if you want to specify, two daughter cells. So it's a cell division which results in two identical or genetically identical daughter cells and from one parent cell. Yeah. So it says state three ways in which genetic engineering is used. So here's what we did. We use it for the production of insulin. What me say? We also, as we talk about the GMO crops, what you're referring to? Um, Mutation is something that is, it wouldn't be something that is some positive when you have a change like that. We would want mutation is like something natural. Mutation is when the gene change naturally, while genetic engineering is more of an artificial way of, you know, including that gene, causing that gene to change. Yeah. So sometimes what we do is to do gene therapy, so we can actually turn off and turn on. And there has been a lot of work going on, persons trying to figure out something like even Alzheimer's, if they can identify, which gene is responsible for persons getting that, so they can turn it off from early. So yeah, they even use it in the production of vaccines. Yeah. So it says any one of these, so the production of insulin, we know that what you find is that there are some bacteria that are genetically engineered, and they do that because they can now produce the insulin, and the insulin is given to persons who may have not been able to, their body is now not able to produce the insulin. So the bacteria is helpful in that way, that you know when they create the insulin, we take it and inject it into those individuals. So we're really doing the production of the insulin. So some persons are not able to produce it again naturally for whatever reason. Yeah. Explain one way in which mitosis is important to living organisms. And as we said, mitosis is a cell division. Yeah. Yeah. And why is that important? That is how some organism, and so we use that in terms of asexual reproduction. Yeah. So mitosis is very important in organisms, even such as yeast, that we use in terms of asexual reproduction. If it wasn't for mitosis, we wouldn't have any growth. So you know that it increases is the number of cells, and we wouldn't even have any repair. So we know that our cells, our skin cells are dying, and new cells are being created through mitosis on a daily basis. So repairs. So growth, repair, and even asexual reproduction. So any one of these you could have listed to give you your importance. Responsible for? Remember, your bone marrow would be doing that. Yeah. Because what is unique about your red blood cells? Remember, the red blood cells, they don't have any nucleus, you know. So again, you spoke earlier about how unique our body is. So God made it that way that they are produced differently than the regular somatic cells. So even that's why again, because the red blood cells, they don't live for long, or they don't stay for long. Farmers visit your biotechnology company to discuss the possibility of producing corn species capable of withstanding drought conditions. And I just mentioned something along that line. They are unsure if they should use artificial selection or genetic engineering for this process. State one way in which genetic engineering and artificial selection are similar. So how are they similar? I didn't hear that. So both of them require human intervention. Yeah? So what you can do in terms of genetic engineering is that you're going to be, selecting the gene, and you can actually put the specific gene within the corn so that they can withstand the drought. Artificial selection, you will basically, allow the plant to produce new corn species by cross pollinating different varieties. Yeah. So at the end of the day, the genetic makeup of the species in both cases is going to be altered. Yeah. So that's one similarity. Complete table 3 in the answer booklet by providing two differences between genetic engineering and artificial selection so that the farmers can make an informed decision. An example has been provided for you. So the example is genetic engineering creates desired traits via gene manipulation to produce the new corn species, while artificial selection, humans will use drought tolerant, capable of withstanding drought condition to produce the new corn species. So we need two difference. So when you look at genetic engineering, the time span, so the time taken for the trait to be introduced to one generation is going to be fast. And that is for genetic engineering. And this is slow. It's going to take a longer time to do this in terms of selection. In terms of genetic engineering, you're going to be more precise. So when you can just take and deal with the specific trait that you want in cases for genetic engineering, For artificial selection, you just select a corn plant that is drought resistant. It has to take on all of the characteristics of that plant. Suppose there is something that you don't want. So in this case, you just extract the specific gene that is responsible for the plant to be drought resistant. For this, you're going to have to get a drought tolerant plant, and that plant will have additional genetic makeup that you might not require. So it's less precise. In the sense of, then that's what we're really talking about now. Limitation in the sense of, now here's the thing that kind of separates genetic engineering, and you know, it doesn't have to be of the same species. And what they're doing, they can take something from an animal, be putting it into a plant. Take something from a plant, putting it into an animal. Yeah? So it doesn't have to be the same species. But for artificial, for you to use that process, they must be of the same species or closely related. Yeah? So any one of those two. So if you're talking about the time taken, genetic engineering is going to be much faster because you're basically selecting for that particular trait. So the next generation, you might have to be doing several breeding. Example for the corn, you might have to pollinate it, more over a period of time for the plant to develop that proper drought resistance that you require. In terms of precision, the targeted genes that you want, yeah, you just put it right there in the plant. For this, it's less precise. You may have to give and take when it comes on to the plant that you're selecting for your drought resistant condition. And then finally, we don't have to use related species. So we can take it from once there's a gene, maybe from again a cattle that deals with the whole drought resistant, that could be used to introduce into a plant. That's how far, the whole concept of genetic engineering can take it. While for artificial selection, it must be related to the species, so you can't use a orange and try to pollinate a corn. That's not going to happen. But if engineering, you could take something from an orange plant and basically put it into a corn plant. So that's the disadvantage right there. And of course, it says explain to farmers one ethical, which is going to be coming back, or one ecological implications that they should consider if they decide to use genetic engineering. So the ethical thing about it, and it's always complaining going back, are we playing God? So persons are of the view the scientists are playing God by trying to create an organism that is going to be superior in itself, and it wasn't created like that. So you make a new species here of organism of corn plant that is drought resistant. Yes, the thought behind it may be good intention, because if you know anything about corn, corn is the thing that is placed in every single feed. So if corn is not there, our livestock or animals that we feed, even your if you have dogs, and corn is, very critical along that line to feeding livestock. So if you don't have it, you're going to have a problem in terms of food security. But the ethical thing about it is that with taking out the gene from one organism and putting it into another, especially across species, they're saying you're playing God. Also, these plants that we create can somehow even get pollinated by a weed, or it can pollinate from a weed, or the information can be transferred to a weed, and we have problems along that line where we have super weed plants that now exist. Yeah, and that can create a problem. Some of these corn that are genetically modified actually cause death to bees who are, beneficial insects. So can have implication along that line. Yeah. Any questions? It says state three differences between animal and plant cells other than, again, they give you one, you can't mention this, other than the presence of mitochondria and chloroplasts. All right, wait. You see, once you give the difference, or once you give in the characteristics for plant, what is good is for you to speak about the animal. So you speak about the large vacuole. How is it in terms of animals? You said the same thing twice. No, you're saying the wrong thing. All right, wonderful. All right. Anybody wants to add anyone that she might have left off? One input. Wonderful. All right. So again, once you don't come and speak about mitochondria, once you don't come and talk about chloroplasts, and you mention the cell wall, the vacuole, the shape, or the storage product, you would have been given the mark. So again, plant cells, the good thing or a better way to do it, don't talk about all the different aspects at once for one. So as you talk about one, you talk about the other. So the plant cell does not have a cell wall, the plant cell has a cell wall, while the animal cell does not have a cell wall. We misspoke about the large vacuole. Could also mention that it is central. Yeah. Some of the animal cells have them temporary. That's the other thing. So the vacuole in the plant is usually permanent because it helps with the turgidity. And it's filled with the cell sap, while that of the animal is usually temporary, and sometimes they don't even have any. Irregular shape for the animal cell, and plants usually have a fixed rectangular shape. And again, this is due to the presence of the cell wall. We talk about the storage in terms of glycogen, and earlier on we spoke about those questions. Well, we saw a question that speaks about the storage, and of course the storage product in plants would have been starch. A group of researchers discovered a mutation that reduces the number of functional mitochondria in plant cells. Explain how this mutation would affect the function of the plant cell. Yeah? Anybody? So the plant is not, some mutation happened, so the mitochondria is not, functioning properly in the plant. Definitely, if you don't have mitochondria is important in terms of the respiration, how the plant will get energy, and so it will affect a lot of metabolic processes, photosynthesis, so the plant will not be able to grow properly. It would have reduced metabolic rate and activity, and of course, it can lead to the death of the plants. Yeah. Next part says, explain 3 ways in which diffusion is important to the processes that occur in living organisms. So they want you to speak on 3 ways that diffusion is important. Anybody want to start by giving me a way that diffusion is important? All right. So yes, no man, it is good. The carbon dioxide and oxygen throughout the body diffuse, especially in the alveoli. Yeah, not true. Yeah, so gaseous exchange, and even plants too, because when you have carbon dioxide getting into the plant leaves, it is through diffusion. So very good point. So gaseous exchange in terms of carbon dioxide and oxygen leaving in and out the lung, the alveoli, and carbon dioxide and oxygen again leaving the leaf. What else? So waste removal, wonderful. So when you talk about waste, excretion, yeah, especially within your nephron, you have that removal of the urea. So that happens due to, diffusion. Not true. Indigestion, I don't know if anybody was thinking about this or just waiting. So you have in the small intestine, when the products like glucose and amino acids, they are basically they diffuse from the small intestine into your bloodstream. So digestion is also an area where it is important. Now, bear in mind, sometimes they put a question if it is important to plants or it's important to human beings or animals, but they said living organisms. So any three that is related to plants or animals, you would get the mark. So even uptake of water and the nutrients. You know that water moves into the root hairs via osmosis from a high concentration to a low concentration. So any one of those, yeah? So again, gaseous exchange, excretion, getting rid of waste, uptake of nutrients and water, and also absorption as it relates to digestion in the small intestine. It says outline one way in which active transport is important to the process that occur in living organisms. So they're testing your knowledge now about active transport. So if you can recall, diffusion goes with your concentration gradient from high to low, while active transport goes against a concentration gradient from low to high. Now sometimes in the soil in particular, you have a situation where there's not a lot of nutrients within the soil. So there's more nutrients within the cells of the plant than that is located in the soil. Does the plant want to lose that nutrients that it has in itself, or want to take up that additional potassium or sodium that is existing in the soil? So that's where active transport comes in. So it will basically be able to go against the concentration gradient where there's a low concentration of nutrients within the soil, the plants can still take it up. And it's the same thing in your digestive tract. So where you start to have a situation where more glucose is in your blood than that which is in your small intestine, yeah, we still are going to want that glucose to move into your bloodstream. So again, active transport will help with the movement along that line. Cool? So